Horrifying. A gun pressed straight to the temple. Heart racing over 180 beats per minute. 90% of robbery victims will scream, sob, drop to their knees, and beg for their lives instantly. But she didn't. In the freezing, pouring rain of an October night in 2025 inside a rundown coffee shop on Chicago's South Side, Elena Hayes simply set the coffee pot down, slowly crossed her arms, stared directly into the barrel. He said in a voice so eerily calm, it sent chills down the spine. "You pathetic piece of shit, your safety's on. Pull that trigger now and yeah, I'll die for real. But you won't dare." The robber's hand trembles violently, finger twitching on the trigger. The entire shop falls deathly silent. And from the darkest corner booth, a man in an expensive overcoat, eyes black as an abyss, is watching her. Without blinking, she has no idea that this exact moment has just changed everything. She has no idea she's just stepped into a love that is blood-soaked, insane, and impossible to escape. Are you ready to witness what happens when a woman with nothing left to lose becomes the most terrifying thing in a mafia kingpin's world? Take a deep breath, because from here, it's going to get very horrifying. Before we dive into this chilling and mysterious story, please remember to subscribe to the channel Alex Truths and like this video. Every subscription, like, and share from you is a huge spiritual gift and an incredibly profound source of motivation for the channel's growth, so we can continue bringing wonderful videos every day to everyone. There would be no greater joy than receiving your love and support through the comments you leave right below this video, comments, sharing your emotions, or telling us which province or city you're living and working in while listening to this story. Alright, let's continue together and immerse ourselves in this amazing, captivating story that's filled with deep emotions. Statistics say that during a robbery, 90% of victims experience a heart rate spike of over 180 beats per minute. They panic, they scream, they beg for their lives. But on a cold, rainy Thursday night in late October of the year 2025, inside a dimly lit corner coffee shop on the south side of Chicago, Elena Hayes did none of those things. The Bean and Brew was barely clinging to life. Faded green awning torn at the edges, cracked vinyl stools, a single flickering neon sign in the window that read, "Open 24 hours, but lied half the time when the power flickered." Elena had been there since 4 in the afternoon, pulling a double shift because someone else called out sick again. Her apron hung loose on her thin frame, the pockets sagging from the weight of a few crumpled singles and loose change. She was 27, but the hollows under her eyes, and the way her collarbones pressed sharply against her skin, made her look older, worn down by too many winters without heat, and too many nights wondering if tomorrow's rent would be paid with air. She wiped the counter with a rag that had seen better decades, the motion automatic mechanical. The shop smelled of burnt coffee grounds and damp cardboard from the leaking roof. Only 3 customers remained at 217 A.M. An elderly man in the corner booth nursed a decaf, his head nodding forward in sleep. A tired college kid hunched over a laptop near the window, earbuds in oblivious. And in the back booth, the one with the ripped cushion and the view of both doors, sat a man who hadn't touched his black coffee since she poured it 40 minutes earlier. Elena had noticed him the second he walked in. Tall, broad-shouldered, fair-skinned, dressed in a charcoal overcoat that probably cost more than her entire year's rent. Dark hair, neatly combed eyes, the deep color of strong espresso under the low lights. He carried himself like someone who owned the room without needing to announce it. When she approached with the pot, he had only pointed at the menu board. "Black," he said, voice low and rough like gravel under tires on wet pavement. "It's fresh," she replied out of habit, pouring carefully so not a drop spilled. Her hand didn't shake. It never did anymore. She noticed the faint white scars across the knuckles of his right hand, no watch, no wedding ring, just quiet evidence of a life that had known violence. She returned to the counter, glanced at the clock. 2:18. That was when the door burst open. Not a gentle push. A violent kick that rattled the frame and sent the little bell jangling wildly. 3 men stormed in, hoodies soaked from the downpour. Ski masks pulled low breath, fogging in the chill air that rushed inside with them. The one in front clutched a snub-nosed revolver in both hands, the barrel trembling. Another gripped a crowbar like it was a lifeline. The third twitched, eyes wide and glassy behind the mask holes, high on something that made his movements jerky and unpredictable. "Everybody down now." On the floor, the gunman shouted, voice cracking with desperation and adrenaline. The college kid yelped and dropped. The old man startled awake, confused hands raised halfway. Elena did not gasp. She did not drop the coffee pot. She set it gently on the warmer, flipped the switch to low, and turned slowly, arms loose at her sides. The gunman zeroed in on her first. "You, get the cash, move." Elena leaned one hip against the counter. She crossed her arms, not defiant, just steady. "Register's open," she said, voice flat, almost bored. "Take what's in the drawer. Leave the tip jar. Those are ours. Silence crashed over the room like a physical thing. The gunman blinked behind the mask. He had expected screams, tears, begging. Instead, this thin woman in a stained apron stared back at him without flinching. He marched forward, shoving the revolver's barrel against her cheek. The metal was icy from the rain, smelled faintly of oil and rust. You think this is funny? I'll blow your head off right here. In the back booth, the man in the charcoal coat shifted just a fraction. His hand moved beneath the overcoat, slow, deliberate. Elena caught the motion in her peripheral vision. Her eyes flicked to him for the briefest second, a tiny, almost imperceptible signal. Don't. She looked straight into the gunman's pupils. Your safety's on, she said calmly. The gunman froze. What? The safety? She repeated, sounding faintly tired. It's a cheap knockoff of a Smith & Wesson. Double-action revolver. No external safety lever. If you pull the trigger right now, it'll fire. But you won't, because you're shaking too hard and amateurs always hesitate when someone calls their bluff. It was a lie wrapped in half-truth. She had no idea what model it was, but she said it with such cold, unshakable certainty that the air seemed to thicken. The gunman's eyes darted down to the weapon. His finger hovered over the trigger, trembling. She's lying, the crowbar guy barked. Just shoot her, I can't, the gunman stammered, fumbling at the gun. Elena sighed, a small, exhausted sound. She reached under the counter. All three men flinched hard, expecting a weapon. Instead, she pulled out a half-empty pack of cigarettes and a cheap plastic lighter. She lit one with steady hands, took a long drag, and exhaled smoke toward the ceiling. You've got maybe 30 seconds, she said. Police station's 3 blocks west. Shift change just happened, double cruisers on the streets tonight. In the distance, faint sirens wailed. Pure luck. The wind carried the sound just right. But Elena didn't smile. She simply raised one eyebrow. Go. The robbers broke. They stumbled over each other, cursing, slamming into the doorframe as they fled into the pouring rain. The register sat untouched. Elena took another drag, walked to the door, closed it, locked it. She turned to the college kid and the old man, both still on the floor, shaking. You two okay? Want some free coffee to go? Her voice was soft now, almost gentle. She returned to the counter, picked up the coffee pot. Her hands were perfectly steady. Then she felt him. The presence behind her was unmistakable, tall, commanding, the faint scent of expensive cologne cutting through the burnt coffee smell. She turned. He stood close. Too close. Looming without crowding. Rain glistened on his overcoat. His eyes, dark, intense, were fixed on her, not the door, not the chaos outside. Just her. You lied, he said quietly. Elena poured him a fresh refill without asking. About the police. About the safety, he continued, voice soft but edged. That was a double-action revolver. One pull and you'd be gone. She met his gaze. Her eyes were dark, hollow, unimpressed. He didn't know that. People like him never do. He studied her face, searching for any fracture in the calm. You knew he wouldn't shoot. I knew he was scared, she corrected. Fear makes people freeze. Freezing gets you caught. And you, he stepped closer. The space between them crackled. You're not scared. Elena gave a dry, humorless laugh. Sir, I make $12 an hour, plus tips. I don't have the energy left to be scared. She tore the check from her pad, $18.75, and placed it on the counter. Unless you want a refill to go. He stared at her for a long, heavy moment. Then he reached inside his coat. A thick money clip appeared, hundreds, crisp and clean. He peeled off 5 bills, $500, and laid them down. Keep the change. He turned toward the door. Paused. Hand on the brass handle. What's your name, Elena? Elena. He tasted the word as if committing it to memory. I'm Lucas. Lucas Harlan. Good for you, Mr. Harlan. Don't come back. A slow, dangerous smile curved his lips. Predatory, almost amused. I think I will. He stepped into the rain. His black SUV idled at the curb, sleek armored headlights cutting through the downpour. The taillights faded into the night. Elena watched until they vanished. Then her legs gave out. She slid down behind the counter, back against the cold metal knees drawn to her chest. Her hands shook violently now, tremors she could no longer hide. She pressed her forehead to her knees, breath ragged, fighting the wave of dizziness that crashed over her. She wasn't brave. She was exhausted. Exhausted from months of ramen for dinner, from the landlord's leering threats when rent was late, from the constant gnawing hunger that never quite went away from sleeping in 3 layers because the heat had been cut off again. From nights so cold, her fingers turned blue, from days so long her vision blurred at the edges. And now this a stranger with eyes like midnight and money like water looking at her as if she were something rare, something worth seeing. Her heart pounded not from fear of the gun, but from something far more terrifying. The possibility that someone had noticed her at all. Across the city, In the back of his armored Escalade, Lucas Harlan stared out at the rain-slicked streets. His hand still held the silver coin he spun when thinking spinning faster, now erratic. Rocco, his enforcer, glanced over from the driver's seat. Boss Lucas didn't answer at first. He closed his eyes, replaying every second the way she set the pot down without a tremor, the flat certainty in her voice, the cigarette she lit, as if facing death was just another Tuesday. A waitress, a starving, invisible waitress, and she had stared down 3 armed men without blinking. Something cracked open inside him, something he had buried deep after his wife died, after the guilt and the blood and the endless nights wondering if he deserved any of this power. Guilt that gnawed like acid. Remorse that burned hotter than any bullet. He had built an empire on fear and calculation. Controlled unions, shipping routes, half the loop's shadows. Yet tonight a woman with nothing but steady hands and hollow eyes had reminded him what real strength looked like. And in that moment, fierce and sudden and utterly unreasonable, he felt it. Love. Not soft, not gentle. A violent, consuming surge that tore through every wall he had ever built. He opened his eyes. "Find out everything about her," he said, voice low, dangerous. "Everything." Rocco nodded once. Lucas leaned back, coin spinning slower now. He would come back, and this time he would not leave her in the cold. 3 days passed like a slow bleed. Elena Hayes woke each morning to the same ritual, the hiss of the radiator that never quite warmed the room, the thin blanket pulled tight around her shoulders, the dull ache in her stomach that had become background noise. Her apartment was on the 4th floor of a brick tenement in Englewood, peeling paint-broken buzzer stairs that smelled of old urine and yesterday's takeout. Rent was $850 a month, due in 4 days. She had $612.47 in a cracked coffee can under the sink. The difference might as well have been a canyon. She had not slept more than 3 hours a night since the robbery, not from fear of guns or masked men, from the memory of dark eyes watching her from the back booth, from the 5 crisp $100 bills still folded in the bottom drawer of her dresser, untouched, burning a hole in her conscience. She told herself she would return them. She told herself she was not the kind of person who kept money that came with strings. But every time she reached for the drawer, her hand froze. She walked the 6 blocks to the Bean and Brew in the gray October dawn coat too thin against the wind off the lake. Her sneakers had holes in the soles. Wet cardboard had been stuffed inside until it disintegrated. She arrived at 6:45 tied on the same stained apron, and began the morning rush, pouring drip coffee for construction workers, steaming oat milk, for the occasional downtown commuter who wandered too far south, wiping counters that never stayed clean. At 10:17, the owner, Mr. Patel, a small, perpetually worried man in his late 50s, called her into the tiny office behind the storeroom. "Elena," he began, not meeting her eyes. He wiped his palms on his khakis. "Sit." She remained standing. Something in his tone made her knees feel liquid. I have to let you go." The words landed like a slap she had been expecting for years. She blinked once. Because of the robbery, Mr. Patel looked miserable. The insurance company called. They saw the security footage. Someone uploaded it to a local news page. They're saying, "You escalated the situation. Liability risk. I can't fight them. I'm barely keeping the lights on." Elena's mouth went dry. "I saved the register. I kept everyone safe." I know. His voice cracked. "But the premiums, they're doubling. I can't." He reached into the desk drawer and slid an envelope across the scarred wood. 2 weeks' pay, plus what's in the tip jar from yesterday. It's all I can do. She stared at the envelope. Inside would be $320 at most. Enough for rent, maybe. Not enough for heat. Not enough for food beyond instant noodles. She took it without a word. Her fingers were cold. They barely closed around the paper. "Thank you, Mr. Patel," she whispered. The politeness came automatically, the way a beaten dog still wags its tail. She walked out the back door, threw the apron into the dumpster. The lid clanged shut like a coffin. It was raining again, cold slanting, the kind that soaked through denim in minutes. She pulled her hood up and started the long walk home. Halfway there, a black SUV eased alongside her at the curb, tinted windows. No markings. The rear passenger window slid down silently. Lucas Harlan. He looked exactly as she remembered. Tailored coat, fair skin, almost luminous against the gray day eyes, unreadable. "Get in," he said. "Not a request." Elena stopped. Rain dripped from her hood onto her cheeks. "No." He leaned forward slightly. "You're soaked. You're shaking. And you just lost your job. Get in before you catch pneumonia." She glanced around. The street was empty, except for a delivery truck idling 2 blocks down. No one to see. No one to help. Her teeth chattered. She hated that he noticed. She opened the door and slid inside. The interior smelled of leather and sandalwood. Heat enveloped her instantly, warm, decadent, almost obscene after months of shivering under thin blankets. She sat rigid, hands knotted in her lap. Lucas studied her for a long moment. Then he reached into the center console and handed her a thick towel, soft monogrammed, the kind found in hotels she had only seen on television. Dry off. She took it without thanks, wiped her face. Her reflection in the tinted window looked ghostly. Cheeks, sunken eyes, too large hair plastered to her skull. "How did you know?" she asked quietly. "I own the building Mr. Patel leases," Lucas said simply. "I made a call." Her breath caught. Horror bloomed slow and cold in her chest. "You got me fired." "Yes." "Why?" "Because you're wasted there." His voice was low, almost gentle. "You have steel in you, Elena. Composure most men in my world would kill for. A diner coffee shop can't hold that." She laughed, a small broken sound. "You don't know me. I know enough." He pulled a black business card from his pocket, thick stock gold embossing. The Iron Bean. "I need a floor manager for my lounge in the Gold Coast. High-end clientele. Politicians. Athletes. My associates. The pay is $3,000 a week. Cash. Benefits. Security. No one touches you. $3,000 a week." The number hit her like a physical blow. More money in 1 week than she had seen in 6 months. Enough to pay rent for a real apartment. Enough to eat something besides canned soup. Enough to stop counting every penny like it was her last breath. She stared at the card. Her hands trembled so badly the embossed letters blurred. "And if I say no," Lucas leaned closer. The air between them thickened. "You won't. Because I know about the medical debt. Your younger brother in Milwaukee cancer treatments. The facility calls every Tuesday. They're threatening to stop chemo if the balance isn't brought current by the end of the month." Elena's world tilted. Nausea surged up her throat. She pressed a hand to her mouth, fighting dizziness. How did he know? That was her deepest secret. The one thing she had never told anyone. The reason she worked doubles. The reason she never complained. "You investigated me," she whispered. Rage and shame collided in her chest, hot and violent. "I protect what I want," he said simply. She looked at him, then really looked. Saw the faint lines around his eyes, the tension in his jaw, the way his hand clenched once on the seat leather as if fighting something inside himself. For a split second, she glimpsed at remorse. Deep gnawing, the kind that lived under expensive suits and armored cars. The kind that whispered he didn't deserve peace. And yet here he was, offering salvation wrapped in chains. "I don't trust you," she said softly. "I know. I don't want your money if it comes with whatever this is." Lucas exhaled slowly. "It comes with protection. That's all I'm asking you to accept right now." Silence stretched between them. Rain drummed on the roof like impatient fingers. Elena's mind spun. Images flashed her brother's pale face in the hospital bed, the eviction notice taped to her door last winter, the nights. She cried herself to sleep because hunger hurt more than pride. And now this man, wealthy beyond imagination, powerful enough to snap his fingers and change lives, looking at her as if she were the only thing in his world worth saving. Something inside her cracked open. Not trust, not yet, but a desperate, aching curiosity. What would it feel like to be seen, to be wanted, to be safe? She took the card, slipped it into her coat pocket. "When do I start?" Lucas's smile was small, triumphant, and edged with something almost like pain. "Tomorrow night. 8 o'clock. I'll send a car." He signaled the driver. The SUV pulled away from the curb. Elena stared out the window at the receding street, her poverty, her life of endless small humiliations. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might bruise her ribs. She should have felt relief. Instead, she felt terror, because for the first time in years someone had looked at her and seen more than a waitress. Seen her, and that terrified her more than any gun ever could. In the front seat, Lucas stared straight ahead. His hand trembled once barely noticeable before he curled it into a fist. He had promised himself, after his wife died, that he would never let anyone close again. Never let guilt turn into hope. Never let remorse soften into something dangerous. And yet, this thin, shivering woman with steel in her spine had walked into his world and torn the vow to pieces without even trying. Love, fierce, unreasonable, consuming, had already taken root, and it hurt like hell. The black town car arrived at 7:45 the next evening, exactly as promised. Elena stood on the cracked sidewalk outside her building, clutching a small canvas tote that held her entire life's worth of presentable clothing. One black blouse she had bought secondhand 3 years ago, dark slacks that were too loose now, and the only pair of flats without visible holes. She had spent the afternoon scrubbing herself in the lukewarm trickle that passed for a shower, trying to wash away the smell of old coffee grounds and damp concrete. Her reflection in the foggy mirror had startled her cheeks, hollower than she remembered, wrists fragile as bird bones, eyes too large in a face that had forgotten how to hope. The driver, a broad-shouldered man with a broken nose and the quiet watchfulness of someone paid to notice everything, opened the rear door without a word. She slid inside. The leather seat was warm. Music played softly, something classical, understated. She had never been in a car this silent. They drove north through the city past the dividing line where graffiti thinned and streetlights grew brighter. Gold Coast. She had only ever passed through on the bus, staring out at the doormen and the gleaming high-rises like someone peering into another country. The Iron Bean occupied the ground floor of a restored limestone building on Dearborn Street. No garish sign, just a discreet brass plaque beside a heavy black door. Inside, the air smelled of aged oak citrus and money. Elena stepped through and stopped breathing for a second. Polished mahogany bar stretching 30 feet, velvet booths the color of aged burgundy. Crystal chandeliers dimmed to a soft amber glow. A jazz trio played in the corner, upright bass-brushed snare saxophone breathing slow melancholy. Men and women in tailored suits and silk dresses moved like they owned gravity itself. A woman in a crisp white shirt approached mid-40s, sharp eyes, calm authority. "Miss Hayes, I'm Mara, head bartender. Mr. Harlan asked me to show you around." Elena nodded mutely. Her voice had retreated somewhere deep. Mara led her through the space with efficient grace. Private alcove screened by heavy drapes. A small office with a desk that looked carved from a single tree. The walk-in humidor that smelled of cedar and wealth. Elena listened. Tried to memorize faces and drink orders, tried not to let her hands shake. At 9:23, the door to the back hallway opened. Lucas Harlan stepped out. He wore a midnight blue suit tonight, collar open, no tie. The faint scar along his jaw caught the low light. His eyes found her instantly across the room, as if he had been waiting for exactly this moment. He crossed the floor without hurry. Every head turned slightly, then looked away. Power moved with him like a shadow. "Elena." His voice was quiet, meant only for her. "You came." She swallowed. "I said I would." He studied her for a long beat. Not the way a boss studies an employee, the way a man studies something he has ached for without knowing it. "Come with me." He led her through a side door into a narrow corridor, then up a short flight of stairs to a private suite overlooking the main floor through one-way glass. The room was small but perfect: leather sofa, low table, a fireplace already crackling. On the table sat 2 mugs of steaming cocoa and a plate of shortbread cookies still warm from the oven. Elena froze in the doorway. Lucas gestured to the sofa. "Sit, please." She obeyed slowly, perching on the edge like she might break the furniture. He sat across from her, elbows on his knees, watching her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "You haven't eaten today," he said. Not a question. She looked down at her hands. "I wasn't hungry." A lie so thin it hurt. He pushed the plate toward her. "Eat." She took one cookie. The butter melted on her tongue, rich, decadent, almost painful after months of flavorless oatmeal and day-old bread. Tears pricked her eyes without warning. She blinked them back furiously. Lucas watched the battle on her face. Something twisted inside him, sharp, violent remorse. He had known hunger once, long ago, before the Empire. Before the guilt became a second heartbeat. Seeing it on her thin wrists, trembling fingers felt like a knife turning in old wounds. He stood abruptly, crossed to a side cabinet, returned with a thick wool throw blanket the color of charcoal. Without asking, he draped it over her shoulders. The weight was shocking, soft, warm, expensive. "You're cold," he said quietly. She clutched the blanket like a lifeline. "Thank you, sir." "Lucas." The correction was gentle but firm. "Not, sir. Not here." Silence settled between them, thick, heavy with unspoken things. Then the door opened. 2 small figures hesitated on the threshold. A girl 5 years old, dark curls wide, hazel eyes clutched the hand of a boy who looked 3 thumb in his mouth, stuffed bear dangling from his other fist. Lucas's entire demeanor changed. The hardness softened into something raw, almost fragile. "Mia. Ethan." He knelt. "Come say hello." The girl approached, first cautious. "Daddy said there's a new lady." Elena's heart stuttered. "Daddy." Lucas lifted the boy onto his hip with practiced ease. "This is Elena. She's going to help take care of things here." Mia studied Elena with solemn gravity. "You look cold." Elena managed a small smile. "I was. But your daddy gave me a blanket." The girl nodded as if this made perfect sense. Then she reached out and touched Elena's hand, tiny fingers warm against skin that had been cold for so long. Elena felt the contact like an electric shock. Warmth, trust, innocence she had forgotten existed. Something inside her cracked wide open. Lucas watched the exchange. His throat worked once, twice. He had lost their mother to cancer 3 years ago, watched her fade while he buried himself in work, in deals and blood, telling himself protection meant distance. The guilt had never left. It lived in his chest like a stone. And now, this woman, starving, guarded, unbreakable, sat in his private room, holding his daughter's hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. Love surged through him again, fiercer this time, terrifying in its clarity. Not lust, not possession. Something deeper, something that hurt. He cleared his throat. They usually stay upstairs with the nanny, but they wanted to see the new person. Mia tugged Elena's sleeve. "Do you like stories?" Elena's voice came out soft, almost reverent. "I love stories." The girl beamed. "I'll tell you one tomorrow." Lucas set Ethan down. The boy toddled over bear dragging and simply climbed onto the sofa beside Elena. He leaned against her side without hesitation, small head resting on her arm. Elena froze. Tears slipped free before she could stop them, one then another. Silent. She didn't wipe them away. Lucas knelt in front of her, close enough that she could smell the faint cedar of his cologne. "You don't have to hide them," he murmured. "Not here." She looked at him, really looked. Saw the torment behind the calm. The man who commanded empires but could not forgive himself for failing the ones who mattered most. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "Any of this." "You already are," he said. He reached out, slow, careful, and brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. The touch lingered. Electric. Reverent. For one suspended heartbeat, the world narrowed to that single point of contact. Then Ethan yawned, breaking the spell. Lucas scooped him up. "Time for bed, little man." He paused at the door, children in his arms. Looked back at Elena, wrapped in his blanket, eyes shining with unshed tears and something dangerously close to hope. "Tomorrow," he said. 8 o'clock again. "I'll be here." She nodded. Couldn't speak. He left. Elena sat alone in the quiet room. The fire crackled. The blanket smelled like him, warm, safe, impossible. She pressed her face into the wool and let the sobs come quiet, wrenching the kind that had been waiting years to escape. Outside in the hallway, Lucas leaned against the wall, eyes closed, breathing hard. He had sworn never again. Never let anyone inside the fortress he had built around his heart. But she was already there. And the love burning through him felt like both salvation and ruin. He straightened. Walked back to the floor. A rival captain waited near the bar, smirking, testing boundaries with a too loud laugh, and a hand on one of the servers. Lucas crossed the room in 6 strides. The man saw him coming. The smirk faltered. Lucas stopped inches away. Voice low. Lethal calm. "Remove your hand. Now." The captain hesitated, then complied. Lucas leaned in. "Next time you forget whose house this is, you won't walk out." The man paled. Backed away. Lucas returned to the one-way glass. Watched Elena still sitting on the sofa, blanket pulled tight, staring into the fire like someone waking from a long nightmare, his fist clenched at his side. He would protect her. From the world. From his enemies. From himself. Because whatever this was, this violent, consuming need to keep her safe, it had already claimed him completely. 2 weeks slipped by in a haze of velvet shadows and quiet miracles. Elena learned the rhythm of the iron bean, the way a drowning person learns to breathe again slowly, gratefully terrified it might vanish. She arrived each evening at 7:45 in the same black town car, wearing the simple, tailored black trousers and silk blouse Lucas had provided without fanfare. The clothes fit her too well, as if someone had measured her in her sleep. She caught glimpses of herself in the mirrored pillars, still thin, still pale, but no longer invisible. The staff nodded to her now. Bartenders slid her espresso without being asked. Bouncers held doors. And every night without fail, Lucas was there. He never hovered. He watched from alcoves, from the one-way glass, from across crowded rooms, eyes always finding her first. When a councilman grew too loud at table 12, Lucas appeared at her shoulder like smoke. "Handle it," he murmured once, voice low against her ear. "Or I will." She handled it. Calm voice. Steady gaze. The man left with apologies and a generous tip he hadn't intended to leave. Afterward, in the quiet corridor behind the bar, Lucas brushed a stray curl from her temple. His fingers lingered. "You're good at this." "I'm just not afraid anymore," she whispered. His thumb traced her cheekbone. "You were never afraid. You were surviving." The words landed soft and heavy. She looked up at him. Really looked and saw the storm behind his calm. Guilt that never slept. Remorse that carved deeper lines around his mouth each time he thought no one noticed. He carried the weight of every life he had ended, every promise he had broken, every night he had left his children sleeping while he walked through blood. And yet he looked at her like she was redemption itself. That night after closing, he found her in the small office counting liquor inventory. The room smelled of oak and lemon polish. She sat on the edge of the desk ledger, open pencil trembling slightly in her hand. He closed the door, locked it. "Elena." She startled. The pencil slipped. "I didn't hear you. You never do when you're lost in numbers." He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopped close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. "You're exhausted." "I'm fine." "You're not." His voice cracked just a fraction. "You're still losing weight. You still wake up cold. I see it." She looked away. Shame burned hot in her throat. Old habits. He reached out, tipped her chin up gently. "No more old habits. Not here." His thumb brushed her lower lip. The touch was electric, reverent, dangerous. She trembled. "Lucas." He leaned in, forehead resting against hers, breathing the same air. "I can't stop thinking about you. Every second, every breath. It's tearing me apart." She closed her eyes, felt the confession sink into her bones. "I don't belong here. You belong wherever I am." The words hung between them, raw, impossible, beautiful. Then his phone buzzed, sharp, insistent. He pulled back with visible effort. "Read the screen." Jaw tightened. "Stay here." He left. Elena waited 5 minutes. 10. Curiosity and worry won. She slipped down the back stairs through the service corridor, out the side door into the alley behind Dearborn. Rain had started again, cold, relentless October drizzle. Lucas stood under the awning, facing 3 men in dark coats. One she recognized from dossier photos Mara had shown her, Victor Russo, underboss of a Northside crew that had been pushing boundaries for months. Victor smirked. "Heard you got yourself a new pet, Harlan. Pretty little thing. Thin. Looks breakable." Lucas's voice was ice. "Walk away, Victor. While you still can." Victor laughed low, mocking. "Or what, you gonna sick your waitress on me?" Elena's heart slammed against her ribs. She stepped forward before she could think. "Leave him alone." 3 heads turned. Victor's eyes narrowed. Well, well. The stray speaks." Lucas's body went rigid. "Elena, go back inside." She didn't move. "He's not worth your time." Victor stepped closer. Rain dripped from his coat. "You got a mouth on you. Maybe I should." Lucas moved fast, silent. He closed the distance in 1 stride, hand clamping Victor's shoulder. Not hard enough to bruise. Hard enough to warn. "Touch her," Lucas said, voice lethally soft, "and I burn your entire operation to the ground." Slowly. Victor flinched, tried to hide it. The other 2 shifted, nervous, uncertain. Victor forced a grin. "Just testing the waters, Harlan. No harm." Lucas released him. "Test them somewhere else." Victor backed away. His men followed. They disappeared into the rain-slicked street. Silence fell. Thick. Heavy. Lucas turned to Elena. Rain plastered his hair to his forehead. His eyes blazed fury, fear, something deeper. "You could have been hurt. I wasn't." He crossed to her in 2 steps, pulled her under the awning, cupped her face in both hands, thumbs brushing rain from her cheeks. "Don't ever do that again," he whispered, voice breaking. "I can't lose you. Not you." She stared up at him. Saw the war inside protector and destroyer, father and killer man, who had sworn never to love again, and man who was drowning in it anyway. "I'm not going anywhere," she said softly. He kissed her forehead, long, lingering, then pulled her against his chest, arms wrapping around her like iron bands. She could feel his heart hammering, wild, frantic. "I don't deserve this," he murmured into her hair. "I don't deserve you." She pressed her cheek to his coat, felt the expensive wool, the steady thud beneath it. "Maybe I don't deserve to be safe. But here I am." He held her tighter. They stood like that for long minutes, rain drumming on the awning city, humming beyond the alley, 2 broken people finding jagged edges that fit. Later, back inside, he led her to the private suite. The children were already asleep upstairs. He poured her tea chamomile, steaming in a porcelain cup that probably cost more than her old apartment's monthly rent. She sipped. Warmth spread through her chest. Lucas sat beside her on the sofa. Close. Not touching. Yet. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. She waited. "I can't give you normal. I can't give you safe streets and quiet nights forever. But I can give you everything else. Protection, family, me, all of me, the good parts, and the dark ones." Tears welled again. She let them fall. "I've never had anyone want all of me," she whispered. "Not even the broken parts, He took her hand, threaded their fingers together. I want every piece. She looked at their joined hands, his scarred knuckles against her thin, trembling fingers. The contrast was stark, brutal, beautiful. Something inside her shifted suspicion, crumbling fear melting into a fierce, burning need. She leaned forward, pressed her lips to his cheek, soft, tentative. He froze, then turned, captured her mouth in a kiss that started gentle and turned desperate. Hands in her hair, arms pulling her closer, a low sound escaped his throat, half groan, half prayer. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. I love you, he said. Simple, devastating. I've loved you since the moment you lit that cigarette and stared down death like it owed you money. Tears spilled freely now. I don't know how to love someone like you, she confessed. Someone who has everything. You already do, he answered. By staying. By seeing me. They sat in silence after that, hands clasped, breathing in rhythm. The fire crackled. Rain tapped the windows. Outside, another shadow moved in the alley, watching, waiting. But inside, for the first time in years, Elena felt warm. And Lucas, powerful, tormented Lucas, felt something close to peace. The storm was coming. But tonight they had this, and it was enough. The nights grew colder as October deepened. Wind sliced through the thin gaps around Elena's old apartment windows, even though she no longer slept there. Lucas had moved her into a quiet, furnished guest suite on the top floor of the Dearborn Building, private elevator, 24-hour security, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering lake. The first time she stepped inside, she stood motionless for almost 10 minutes, staring at the king-sized bed, with actual pillows that weren't flattened from years of use at the kitchenette, stocked with fresh fruit she had only ever seen behind glass at the grocery store, at the thermostat that responded instantly when she turned the dial. She had cried then, silently, shoulders shaking, because luxury felt like a betrayal of everything she had endured, because warmth should not have felt so foreign. She still woke before dawn most mornings, heart racing, expecting the landlord's fist on the door, or the bitter taste of hunger that had lived in her mouth for so long. Old habits died hard. Even now, when she passed a mirror, she sometimes saw the hollow-eyed woman from the South Side coffee shop staring back, thin arms, collarbones, sharp enough to cut glass skin, pale from too many months without sunlight. Lucas noticed. He noticed everything. He never commented on her weight, never remarked on how small her wrists looked when she reached for a glass. Instead, he filled her plate without asking, warm eggs, fresh berries, thick slices of sourdough toast, drizzled with honey. When she tried to protest, he simply said, Eat, Elena. For me. And she did. Because refusing felt like hurting him. The children came to her more and more often. Mia slipped into the sweet after-school homework folder clutched to her chest, asking Elena to read aloud even though she could read perfectly well herself. Ethan toddled behind, dragging his bear, climbing onto the sofa, and curling against Elena's side, as if he had always belonged there. She let them. She let herself love them. And every time Mia called her Mommy L in a sleepy whisper, something inside Elena fractured, a little more painful, beautiful, terrifying. Lucas watched these moments from doorways, from across rooms, from the shadows where he thought no one saw him. The sight of his daughter's small hand in Elena's, the way Ethan's head rested on her shoulder, the quiet laughter that drifted down the hall, it tore him open in ways he had not believed possible anymore. He had failed their mother. Failed to protect her. Failed to be there when the hospital monitors flatlined. The guilt had calcified into armor, cold, unbreakable, necessary. Now that armor was cracking, and the love he felt for Elena was the hammer striking it again and again. One Thursday night, October 23rd, 2025, he found her in the back office, reconciling the week's liquor orders. The room was quiet except for the soft scratch of her pencil and the distant thump of bass from the floor below. He leaned in the doorway, arms folded, watching her. She looked up, smiled small, shy, still not quite believing this was real. You're early tonight. Couldn't stay away. She set the pencil down. You never can. He crossed the room, stopped behind her chair, placed both hands on her shoulders, gentle but possessive, bent and pressed a kiss to the crown of her head. I love you, he murmured against her hair. She closed her eyes, let the words sink in. I love you too. Simple. True. Still terrifying. He straightened. I have to step out for a meeting. 30 minutes. Stay here, she nodded. He left. Elena waited 5 minutes. Then curiosity mixed with the old instinct to watch exits to know what was coming pulled her to her feet. She slipped down the service stairs, moving quietly, staying in shadows. The corridor behind the loading dock was dimly lit. 2 voices drifted from the alcove, near the emergency exit. One belonged to Dominic Lucas's dock captain, a man in his late 40s with a quiet demeanor, and 20 years of loyalty. Or so everyone believed. The other voice was unfamiliar, jittery, high-strung. Elena recognized it instantly. The twitching robber from the coffee shop. Bulging eyes. The one she had sent running with nothing but a cigarette and a bluff. Her blood turned to ice. She pressed herself against the wall, breath shallow. "You were supposed to wait for him to stand up," Dominic hissed. "One clean shot in the crossfire. That's all. Instead, you ran because a girl scared you with a cigarette." She knew the gun, the junkie whined. She called the model. Said the safety was on. She was spooky, man. "Shut up." Dominic's voice dropped lower. "Here's another 1,000. Get out of the city. If I see you again, I'll bury you under the Stevenson Expressway myself." The junkie snatched the cash and bolted. Elena's knees buckled. She slid down the wall back, pressed to cold concrete, hands clamped over her mouth to stifle the gasp that tried to escape. The robbery had not been random. It had been a hit. On Lucas. Orchestrated by one of his own men. The realization hit like a physical blow, dizzying, nauseating. She pressed her forehead to her knees, fighting the wave of disorientation that threatened to pull her under. If she told Lucas, who would he believe? The woman he had known for weeks, the woman he loved, or the captain who had stood beside him for 2 decades? She had no proof. Only overheard words in a dark hallway. And if Dominic discovered she had heard, she wrapped her arms around herself, shivered. The hallway felt colder than any winter night she had ever spent on the south side. She forced herself to stand, legs unsteady. She crept back upstairs, slipped into the office, sat at the desk as if she had never left. When Lucas returned 20 minutes later, she was still staring at the ledger, numbers blurred, meaningless. He studied her face. "What's wrong?" She forced a smile. "Just tired." He crossed to her, knelt in front of her chair, took both her hands in his. "You're shaking." "I'm fine." "You're not." His thumb stroked her knuckles. "Talk to me." She looked into his eyes, dark, searching, filled with the same torment she felt mirrored in her own chest. She wanted to tell him. Wanted to lay the truth at his feet like an offering. But fear of losing him, of shattering what they had only just begun to build, choked the words. Instead, she leaned forward, pressed her lips to his soft, desperate pleading. He kissed her back with a hunger that bordered on reverence, hands sliding into her hair, pulling her closer. A low sound of need escaped him. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. "Whatever it is," he whispered, "you can tell me. Always." She closed her eyes. Tears slipped free. "I know." But she didn't tell him. Not yet. Later that night, in the private suite, Mia and Ethan were asleep in the adjoining room. Elena sat on the sofa, wrapped in one of Lucas's cashmere throws, soft, impossibly warm. He sat beside her arm around her shoulders, fingers tracing slow circles on her arm. She leaned into him, let herself pretend for just a moment that the world outside did not exist. He kissed her temple. "You're safe here," he said quietly. "You and the kids." "I swear it." She turned her face into his neck, breathed him in cedar warmth, safety. "I believe you," but inside terror coiled tighter, because the man who had promised to protect her had a knife at his back, and the hand holding it belonged to someone he trusted. And Elena, once powerless, once invisible, was now the only one who knew. The weight of that knowledge pressed down on her chest until she could barely breathe. She clung to Lucas harder. He held her just as tightly. Neither spoke. Outside, the wind howled against the windows. Inside, 2 hearts beat in frantic rhythm. Love, fear, and the gathering storm colliding in perfect, agonizing silence. The betrayal had only just begun to show its teeth. And Elena knew she would have to be the shield, even if it broke her. October 28, 2025. The sky over the Chicago River was the color of old bruises, low, heavy clouds promising snow before morning. Lucas had been quiet all day. Too quiet. The kind of silence that settled into his shoulders like lead. Elena watched him from across the suite while he buttoned his black dress shirt in front of the mirror, each movement deliberate, controlled, the way a man prepares for war without saying the word aloud. He caught her gaze in the reflection, offered a small, tired smile. "High-stakes game tonight," he said. "Warehouse on the West Fork. Old meatpacking district. I need you there." Her stomach twisted. "Why me?" "Because you see things no one else does." He crossed to her, took her hands. "And because I don't trust anyone else to watch my back the way you do." She searched his face, saw the shadows under his eyes, the faint tremor in his jaw he tried to hide. The guilt that lived there now had new teeth sharper since she had come into his life. He blamed himself for every risk she now carried, for pulling her from one kind of danger straight into another. "I'll go," she whispered. He kissed her knuckles one by one, then pressed her palm to his chest so she could feel the heavy thud beneath the crisp cotton. "I love you," he said against her skin. "More than I know how to say." She closed her eyes, let the words anchor her against the rising dread. They drove in 2 vehicles. Rocco at the wheel of the lead Escalade, Elena beside Lucas in the back. The children were safe upstairs with Mara and 2 armed nannies who doubled as former military. Lucas had kissed them both goodnight twice, once for each before leaving. The warehouse smelled of rust and old blood. Dim industrial lights hung from rafters, casting long shadows over stacks of shipping crates. A single poker table sat under a hanging bulb in the center, felt green chips stacked like small towers of ambition. 4 other men already seated, 2 neutral high rollers from Milwaukee, 1 quiet union boss, and Dominic. Dominic smiled when Lucas entered. Warm, easy, the same smile he had worn for 20 years. "Boss, glad you made it." Lucas nodded once. Took the head seat. Elena moved to stand slightly behind him, and to the right silver tray, in hand with crystal glasses and a bottle of bourbon. She poured without tremor. Her eyes never stopped moving, exits, shadows, hands, faces. The game began. Cards flipped. Chips slid. Low voices murmured bets and bluffs. Elena watched Dominic. He kept checking his watch, subtle glances toward the rafters, a faint sheen of sweat at his hairline, despite the chill in the air. Her pulse kicked harder. She leaned down as if to ask Lucas about ice for his drink. Lips close to his ear. Rafters, she breathed. 3 o'clock. Glint of metal. Lucas did not flinch, did not look up. He simply picked up his cards, studied them for a beat, then tossed them face down. Fold. He reached for his glass. In the amber reflection, he saw it the faint outline of a scope. Sniper. At the same moment, Dominic pushed back from the table. Need to hit the head. Deal me out for a hand. Lucas's voice cut through the room like a blade wrapped in velvet. Dominic. The captain froze halfway out of his chair. Sit. Down. Dominic's smile faltered. What's the problem, boss? Lucas set his glass down with deliberate calm. Sit. The air in the warehouse thickened. The other players shifted uncomfortable, sensing the shift from game to something far more lethal. Elena's heart hammered so hard she felt it in her teeth. Dominic laughed, short-forced. You're paranoid tonight. Sit. Lucas repeated. Softer, deadlier. Dominic hesitated, then slowly lowered himself back into the chair. Elena moved first. Drop the tray, she said loud enough for Lucas alone. She did not wait for him to react. Her free hand fisted in the back of his suit collar and yanked hard. Chair scraped. Lucas toppled backward just as the crack split the air. The bullet punched through the green, felt exactly where his heart had been a heartbeat earlier. Wood splintered. Chips scattered like broken teeth. Ambush Rocco roared from the door 30 feet away, already drawing his weapon. Chaos erupted. The other players dove for cover behind crates. Gunfire flashed muzzle blooms in the dark. Bullets pinged off concrete, chewed into shipping containers. Lucas rolled with Elena behind a stack of pallets. His body shielded hers for a split second before he came up in a crouch, Beretta already in hand. Sniper high, flankers left, he shouted to Rocco. More shots. Glass shattered somewhere overhead. Elena pressed against Lucas's side. Felt the heat of him, the rapid rise and fall of his chest. Dominic set you up, she said over the gunfire. Voice steady despite the terror clawing her throat. I heard him. With the junkie from the coffee shop. It was never random. Lucas turned his head. Eyes blazing, fury, realization, heartbreak all at once. He pulled her closer for one fierce second. Pressed his lips to her temple. Stay down. No. She saw it before he did. A gunman slipping along the left wall, rifle raised, aiming at Lucas's exposed back while he tracked the sniper. Elena did not think. She lunged. Slid across the gritty floor on her knees. Reached the fallen bodyguard 10 feet away. Closed her fingers around the Glock he had dropped. The grip was still warm. The flanking gunman sighted Lucas. Elena fired. 2 shots. Center mass. The man jerked. Dropped. Lucas spun, gun raised, saw Elena on one knee, smoking pistol in both hands, stance perfect, eyes cold and focused. For one suspended heartbeat, the world narrowed to just them. She met his gaze. I told you, she said softly. I know about safeties. Lucas stared at her, shock, awe, love so fierce it bordered on pain. Then reality crashed back. Rocco, suppressing fire, Lucas yelled. Rocco opened up with the submachine gun he had pulled from under his coat. Short, controlled bursts that pinned the remaining attackers. Lucas grabbed Elena's arm. Exit on 3. 1, 2, 3. They ran. Bullets chewed the floor behind them. Sparks flew. They burst through the side door into the pouring rain. The second SUV waited, engine running. They dove inside. "Go," Lucas roared. Tires screamed. The armored vehicle tore away from the warehouse, leaving gunfire and betrayal in the rear view. Inside the car, silence fell like snow, thick, suffocating. Elena sat trembling now. Adrenaline crash hitting hard. The Glock lay on the floor mat between her feet. Her hands, still perfect, still steady a minute ago, shook violently. Lucas stared at the gun, at her face, at the faint smear of grease across her cheek. "You killed him," he said quietly. "He was going to shoot you in the back." Lucas reached out, took her shaking hands in his. His grip was bruising, possessive, desperate, terrified. "You saved my life," he said. Twice, as if saying it again would make it more real. Tears slipped down her cheeks, silent, unstoppable. "I heard him," she whispered. "Dominic, talking to the junkie. It was an inside job." Lucas's face hardened into something lethal. But when he looked back at her, the hardness cracked. He pulled her against his chest, wrapped both arms around her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I'm sorry," he murmured into her hair. "I'm so sorry I brought you into this." She clung to him, face pressed to his shirt, wet with rain and her tears. "I'm not sorry," she said, voice muffled, broken. "I'm here, with you." He kissed the top of her head, held her like she might vanish. Outside, the city blurred past rain-slicked streets, sodium lights, the indifferent glow of a world that did not know what had just happened. Inside the car, two people sat wrapped in each other, love burning brighter than the fear, brighter than the betrayal, brighter than the blood that had almost been spilled. Lucas stared out the window at the dark river. Dominic was a dead man, but Elena, thin, once invisible Elena, was alive. And she had chosen him. Again, the guilt in his chest twisted sharper than ever, because he knew now with brutal clarity that he would burn the city to keep her safe. And he would hate himself for every flame. But he would do it anyway, because she was his. And he was hers, completely. The armored Escalade 8 miles of wet interstate in silence. Rain lashed the tinted windows and sheets. Elena sat pressed against Lucas's side, his arm locked around her shoulders, the Glock she had fired still lying forgotten on the floor mat between their feet. Her hands would not stop shaking. Not violently, just a fine, constant tremor like the aftershock of an earthquake only she could feel. Lucas stared straight ahead, jaw set, eyes dark pools reflecting passing sodium lights. Every few minutes, his fingers tightened on her arm, not hard enough to bruise, just enough to remind himself she was still there, still breathing. Rocco drove without speaking. The enforcer's knuckles were white on the wheel, blood still drying on his forehead from a graze he refused to acknowledge. They left the city behind. Suburbs blurred into dark farmland. Then forest. The road narrowed to 2 lanes, then gravel. Headlights carved tunnels through pine and oak. The lake house appeared at the end of a 3-mile dirt track, timber and glass, low and sprawling windows glowing warm against the black woods. No lights on the approach road. No signs. Invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. Lucas killed the engine. Silence rushed in louder than gunfire. "Inside," he said, voice rough, exhausted. Elena followed him up the wide steps. Her legs felt detached from her body. Each footfall echoed in her skull. Inside, the air smelled of cedar and faint wood smoke. Lucas keyed a discreet panel. Recessed lights came up soft. Exposed beams. Stone fireplace already laid. Leather furniture, the color of midnight. A kitchen bigger than her old apartment. He went straight to the liquor cabinet, poured 2 fingers of whiskey into a heavy tumbler, drank half in one swallow, then collapsed onto the sofa, head back, eyes closed. Elena stood frozen near the door. Blood stained the left shoulder of his dress shirt, dark, spreading slowly. A graze. Shallow, but real. "You're bleeding," she said, voice small, almost lost. "It's nothing. It's not nothing." She crossed to the kitchen, found the first aid kit under the sink, standard placement, military neat. She returned, took the whiskey from his hand without asking. Took a small sip herself, burning, steadying, then set it aside. Shirt off. He opened his eyes, looked at her, really looked. Saw the tremor in her hands, the way her lips pressed thin to keep them from shaking harder. He unbuttoned the ruined shirt slowly, let it fall open. His torso was a map of violence. Knife scars, bullet wounds faded to silver, burns, fresh bruises blooming purple across his ribs from the fall in the warehouse. The graze on his shoulder wept sluggishly. Elena soaked gauze in antiseptic. "This will burn. Do it." She pressed the pad to the wound. He hissed through clenched teeth, hand gripping the armrest until leather creaked. She cleaned with clinical precision, gentle, efficient, then applied butterfly strips, gauze tape. When she finished, she did not pull away. She stood between his knees, hands resting on his bare chest, feeling the heavy, uneven thud beneath her palms. "You should have left me at the coffee shop," she whispered. Lucas looked up at her, eyes dark, exhausted, burning. "If I had left you there, you'd be dead by now." Dominic would have cleaned up loose ends. "I was dead anyway," she said, voice cracking. "I've been dead for years. Since the eviction notices started piling up, since the nights I slept in 3 sweaters because the heat was cut off again, since I counted quarters for ramen and still came up short. I was just waiting." He reached up, cupped the back of her neck, pulled her face down until their foreheads touched. Now he asked softly, "Now I'm terrified," she admitted. "But I'm awake." His thumb stroked her cheek, slow, reverent. "You're not just awake, Elena. You're fire." His voice broke on the word. "I saw you tonight. You didn't hesitate. You didn't freeze. You saved me. Again." "I shot a man, Lucas." "You saved me," he repeated. "Fiercer. In my world, that's the only morality that matters. Us against them." The distance between them vanished. He pulled her down onto his lap, kissed her with a hunger born of near-death desperate, claiming tender and violent all at once. She kissed him back, fingers tangling in his dark hair, body arching into his. For the first time in years, she did not feel small, did not feel invisible. She felt powerful, seen, wanted. They stayed like that, wrapped in each other while the fire caught, and shadows danced long across the walls. Later, much later, when breath had steadied and skin had cooled, Lucas murmured against her temple, "I need to tell you something." She lifted her head, looked at him. "I'm pregnant," she said before he could speak. The words hung in the quiet room like smoke. Lucas went still, completely still, then his hand moved slow, careful, slid to her stomach. Palm flat, warm. "How long?" Voice, barely above a whisper. 6 weeks, maybe 7. Tears slipped free again. "I found out 2 days ago. I was going to tell you tonight. Before everything." He stared at her, at the place where his hand rested. Then he looked up, eyes shining. "You're carrying our child." She nodded, couldn't speak. He pulled her close again, buried his face in her neck, shoulders shaking once only before he forced them still. "I don't deserve this," he whispered. "Any of this. You, them, a future." She cupped his face, made him look at her. "You already have it." He kissed her again, slower this time. Deeper, a promise sealed in salt and heat. Outside, the wind howled through the pines. Inside, the fire crackled. 2 broken people found jagged pieces that fit. They stayed on the sofa until the logs burned low. Lucas pulled a thick throw over them both, held her against his chest, hand resting protectively over the faint swell that wasn't visible yet. "I called the house," he said quietly. "The kids are safe. Asleep. Mara's staying the night." Elena nodded against his skin. "Tomorrow we go back," he continued, voice hardening. "We end this, Dominic. Whoever else is involved. No more half measures." She lifted her head, met his gaze. "I'm with you." He kissed her forehead. Long, lingering. "You're my family now," he said. "All of you. And no one touches my family." She pressed closer. Let herself believe for one suspended night that safety could be real, that love could be stronger than fear. But in the quiet corners of her mind, the old voices whispered, "You don't belong here. You'll ruin him. You'll lose everything again." She pushed them down, curled tighter into Lucas's arms, listened to the steady beat of his heart. And for the first time since childhood, she let herself hope. Outside, snow began to fall soft, silent, covering the world in white. Inside, love burned steady against the dark, fierce, unbreakable, and terrifyingly fragile. Because tomorrow the war would come for them, and they would face it together. Or not at all. They returned to Chicago under a sky the color of wet slate. Snow had fallen overnight, thin, gritty flakes that melted on contact with the heated pavement, but clung stubbornly to the shadows. It was October 30th, 2025. The city moved on as though nothing had happened. Traffic snarled, horns blared. Life continued its indifferent grind. Inside the Iron Bean, everything had changed. Lucas had summoned the heads of the remaining Allied families, 5 men who still remembered the old codes, who still believed in territory lines drawn in blood and honor. The main floor was cleared, tables pushed against the walls, velvet booths empty, the jazz trio sent home. Only low amber sconces remained lit, casting long, jagged shadows across the polished floor. A single, heavy oak chair sat in the center circle like a throne no one dared claim yet. Elena stood near the bar in a sleek black dress Lucas had chosen for her silk, that clung without clinging high neckline long sleeves. Beneath the hem, a small tactical knife was strapped to her thigh. Not for show, for survival. Her hands were steady now. The tremor had gone somewhere deep inside, locked away with the rest of her old fears. Lucas moved through the room like a storm contained in a suit, midnight blue, collar open. The graze on his shoulder hidden beneath fresh bandages and fresh fabric. He looked at peace. He was not. Dominic arrived last. He walked in with the easy stride of a man who still believed he held cards no one else had seen. 2 of his own men flanked him, loyal shadows. He stopped at the edge of the circle, smiled. "Boss," he said. Warm, familiar. "You called." Lucas did not smile back. "Sit." Dominic hesitated only a heartbeat, then took the chair opposite the empty center seat. His men stood behind him, hands loose, eyes watchful. The 5 family heads filed in one by one, took their places, silent, waiting. Lucas remained standing. "Thank you for coming," he began, voice low, carrying without effort. "We have a problem." He let the silence stretch. Then he looked straight at Dominic. A problem named betrayal. The room went colder than the wind outside. Dominic's smile froze. "What are you talking about?" Lucas stepped forward. Slow, deliberate. The coffee shop holdup. Not random, not amateurs. A test, a setup. "You paid the junkie to pull the trigger when I stood up. Crossfire, clean, untraceable." Dominic laughed short. "Sharp, that's insane. You're paranoid, Lucas." "The girls got you twisted," Elena moved. She stepped into the light, voice soft, steady. "I heard you," she said. "In the back corridor. The night after the first attempt. You gave him another 1,000. Told him to disappear." Dominic's eyes flicked to her, narrowed. "You're the waitress. You don't belong here." "I belong wherever he is," she answered quietly. Lucas watched Dominic's face. Saw the flicker the moment calculation turned to panic. "You're finished," Lucas said. "No anger. Just fact. But I want to know why." Dominic leaned back, forced another laugh. "Because you're weak," he spat, soft. "Ever since she walked in here, you've been playing house. Kids. A woman. A baby on the way. You think the streets respect that. You think the families respect a boss who's gone soft." Lucas's expression did not change. But inside, the guilt roared louder than ever. Because Dominic was not entirely wrong. Love had made him vulnerable. Love had made him human. And in their world, human was a death sentence. Elena felt the shift in him, the sudden tension in his shoulders. She stepped closer, slipped her hand into his, squeezed once. He looked down at her, saw the quiet steel in her eyes. And the guilt cracked wider, because she was not weakness. She was the only strength he had left. Before anyone could speak again, the front doors burst open. Victor Russo strode in white suit, pristine, despite the snow outside. 4 men behind him, armed, smirking. "Evening, gentlemen," Victor called. Voice cheerful. "Heard there was a family meeting. Thought I'd drop by." Lucas turned slowly. "You weren't invited." Victor spread his hands. "I invited myself." The air turned electric. Elena's pulse thundered in her ears. Victor's gaze slid to her, lingered. "Still protecting the stray Harlan. She's got a kid in her belly now. Makes her even more breakable." Lucas stepped in front of Elena, body shielding hers. "Leave," he said, voice deadly calm. Victor laughed. Then the lights flickered. A second later, sparks. One of Victor's men had yanked the main breaker. Darkness swallowed the room. Only the red emergency strobes remained pulsing bloody light. Gunfire erupted. Not wild, controlled, precise. Elena grabbed Lucas's arm, pulled him down behind the bar. "Stay low," she hissed. He shook his head. "I end this now." She held tighter. "Not without me." He looked at her, fierce love and fiercer fear, colliding in his eyes. Then he nodded once. They moved together low fast through the chaos. Shadows and strobes. Glass shattering. Men shouting. Elena saw Dominic first backing toward the rear exit, gun raised. She did not hesitate. She threw herself forward, grabbed a fallen bottle of high-proof rum from the floor, hurled it at the nearest sconce. The bulb exploded. Alcohol ignited mid-air. A fireball bloomed bright, sudden, plunging the room into deeper chaos as the secondary breaker tripped. Darkness again. Only strobes. In the red flashes, Elena saw Victor raise his pistol, aiming at Lucas's back. She screamed his name. Lucas spun. Too late. The shot cracked. Lucas jerked, hit the floor hard. Blood bloomed across his side. Elena's scream tore her throat raw. She dove for him, pressed both hands over the wound. Hot, wet, too much. Stay with me, she begged, voice breaking. Please. He coughed once wet ragged, managed a pained smile. You really hate bad tippers, he wheezed. Tears streamed down her face. She laughed through them, broken, desperate. I pulled the silent alarm, she whispered. Help's coming. He squeezed her hand. Weak. But there. I'm not going anywhere, he murmured. We have work to do. Across the room, strobes flashing. Victor adjusted his aim for the kill shot. Elena looked up. A shotgun lay on the floor, dropped by a wounded bartender 5 feet away. She lunged, rolled, grabbed cold steel, pumped the action. Chunk, chunk. She was on her back, sliding on blood-slick floor. Raise the barrel. Victor hesitated. In the red light, he saw her face, the same icy calm she had worn facing down the robbers in the coffee shop. Checkmate, she whispered. She fired. The blast caught him square in the chest, lifted him off his feet, threw him back into the velvet booth. Silence returned, broken only by the wailing alarm. Elena scrambled to Lucas, pressed her hands over his wound again. Stay with me, she pleaded. Stay. Sirens wailed closer. He lifted a hand, cupped her cheek, thumb brushing away tears. I love you, he said, voice fading but certain. I love you too. The doors burst open, police, paramedics, Rocco leading the charge. Hands pulled her back. She fought them. Let me stay with him. They lifted Lucas onto a stretcher. She followed, running beside the gurney, holding his hand until the ambulance doors closed. In the quiet that followed, snow falling outside, red and blue lights painting the street, she stood alone on the sidewalk. Thin dress, no coat, snow melting on her shoulders. She wrapped her arms around herself, felt the small life inside her, felt the weight of everything she had almost lost, and in that moment, cold, terrified, heartbroken, she understood. She was no longer the invisible waitress. She was his, and he was hers. Whatever came next, they would face it together, or die trying. 3 weeks passed in fragments, hospital corridors painted pale green, the steady beep of monitors, the smell of antiseptic that clung to everything. Lucas survived the surgery. The bullet had torn through muscle, nicked a rib, missed every vital organ by millimeters the doctors called miraculous. He woke in recovery, asking for her name before he asked for water. Elena never left his side. She sat in the vinyl chair beside his bed, thin hospital blanket draped over her shoulders, one hand always resting on his. The nurses brought her trays she barely touched. Sleep came in stolen minutes, head resting on the mattress edge, fingers still laced with his. Her body, already fragile from years of hunger and cold, grew thinner still. Cheeks more hollow. Eyes shadowed purple. Yet she refused to leave. When he was finally moved to a private suite on the top floor of the hospital, paid for in cash, no questions asked, he reached for her the moment the door closed. Come here, he rasped. She climbed onto the narrow bed without hesitation. Curled against his uninjured side, head on his chest, listened to the strong, stubborn beat beneath the bandages. I thought I lost you, she whispered. He kissed the top of her head. You didn't. They stayed like that for hours, quiet breathing and rhythm, letting the world wait outside the door. The children visited every afternoon. Mia brought drawings, stick figures of a family holding hands under a big sun. Ethan carried his bear and climbed carefully onto the bed, nestling between them. Lucas held them both with his good arm. Elena stroked their hair. For those brief windows, the room felt safe. Whole, but safety is fragile. On the morning of November 17th, exactly 3 weeks after the shooting, Elena woke to an empty bed and a ringing phone. Lucas was already gone. Discharged against medical advice. A note on the pillow in his handwriting. Meeting at the Bean. 1 hour. Stay with the kids. I love you. Her stomach dropped. She dressed quickly, borrowed clothes from a nurse too big hanging off her frame. Called Mara. No answer. Called Rocco. Straight to voicemail. Panic rose sharp and cold. She took a cab to the Dearborn building. Snow had turned to sleet overnight, gray stinging. The private elevator ride felt endless. When the doors opened on the top floor, silence greeted her. No nanny in the hallway. No soft voices from the playroom. The children's bedroom door stood ajar. Toys scattered. Bed unmade. A single sheet of paper pinned to the pillow with a knife. We have them. You want them back, you come alone. Old stockyards. Midnight. No police. No Harlan. Or they die screaming. Elena's knees buckled. She caught herself on the doorframe. Vision tunneling. breath shallow. The room spun, dizzying, nauseating. She slid to the floor, pressed her forehead to cool wood, tried to force air into lungs that refused to expand. 5 years old, 3 years old, Mia's drawings, Ethan's bear, gone. She forced herself up, legs trembling. Found her phone, hands shaking so badly she dropped it twice. Lucas answered on the first ring. They took them, she said, voice cracking, barely audible. Silence on the line, then a sound like something breaking inside him. Where old stockyards? Midnight. Come alone. No police. I'm coming now. No. Her voice steadied ice over terror. They said no, Harlan. If they see you, Elena, I'm going. The line went quiet. Then his voice low, raw, torn open. Don't you dare leave that building without me. She ended the call, found the small safe in the closet. Lucas had shown her the combination weeks ago, just in case. He had said, inside cash, a spare key fob, a compact 9mm pistol she had never touched. She took the pistol, the cash, left everything else. The cab ride south felt surreal. Sleet tapping the windows. Streetlights bleeding orange across wet pavement. She stared at her reflection in the glass, pale, hollow-eyed, a ghost wearing someone else's clothes. The old stockyards loomed at the edge of the city, rusted gates, abandoned pens, skeletal buildings black against the night sky. Snow had stopped. Wind cut through her thin coat like knives. She walked alone through the main gate. Boots crunching on gravel. A single floodlight burned in the center yard. Mia and Ethan sat on the frozen ground, hands zip-tied behind them, mouths taped, eyes wide with terror. Victor Russo's second-in-command, Marco, stood behind them, pistol in hand. 2 other men flanked him. Elena stopped 10 feet away. Let them go. Marco smiled, slow, cruel. You're brave, Waitress. Or stupid. Let them go. He raised the pistol, pointed it at Mia's head. Elena's world narrowed to that barrel. She lifted her hands slowly. I came alone. Like you asked. Marco laughed. Then headlights cut the darkness. An Escalade roared through the gate, skidded to a stop. Lucas stepped out alone, coat open, hands visible. Marco's smile vanished. You were told, Lucas's voice carried across the yard, calm, lethal. Let my children go. Now. Marco hesitated, looked at his men. Elena moved. She lunged forward, low, fast, grabbed Ethan first, ripped the tape from his mouth, cut the zip ties with the small knife from her thigh, pushed him behind her. Mia next. Marco swung the pistol toward her. Lucas charged. No shots fired. Only bodies colliding, fists, elbows, the dull thud of impact on frozen ground. Lucas took the first man down with a single strike to the throat. The second hesitated long enough for Elena to scoop Mia into her arms and run toward the shadows of the nearest building. Marco fired once, wild, panicked. The bullet grazed Lucas's arm, fresh blood over old bandages. He did not stop. He tackled Marco, drove him to the ground, knee on his chest, fist raised. Marco stared up, fear in his eyes now. Lucas looked at Elena across the yard, children clinging to her, her face streaked with tears and sleet. The fist trembled, then lowered. He stood, dragged Marco up by the collar. You live, Lucas said quietly, because she's watching. Marco sagged. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called after all. Lucas released him. Marco stumbled back, then ran. Lucas crossed the yard in long strides. Elena met him halfway. He dropped to his knees in the snow, pulled Mia and Ethan into his arms, held them so tightly they squeaked. Elena knelt beside them, wrapped her arms around all 3. Lucas lifted his head, looked at her eyes, shining voice shattered. You came alone. I had to. He pulled her close, 4 bodies tangled together in the freezing yard. I almost lost you all, he whispered. Again. She pressed her lips to his temple. You didn't. Sirens grew louder. Rocco's team arrived first, securing the perimeter, gathering the unconscious men. Lucas stood, lifted Ethan, took Mia's hand. Elena walked beside him, thin coat soaked through, body shaking from cold and adrenaline. He wrapped his good arm around her waist. Home, he said. She nodded. They drove back through the city, snow falling again, soft now, almost gentle. In the back seat, the children slept against them. Lucas rested his forehead against Elena's. I love you, he said, voice thick, more than anything. She turned her face into his neck. I love you too. The Escalade hummed through the night. And for the first time since the coffee shop, since the cold nights, the hunger, the invisibility, Elena allowed herself to believe. They were safe. They were together. They were family. The storm had not broken them. It had forged them. And nothing, Not betrayal, not bullets, not the past would take that away. Not ever. The night after the children were returned felt like the calm before another storm, too quiet, too still. Elena sat on the edge of the children's bed long after they had fallen asleep, watching the slow rise and fall of their chests. Mia clutched the corner of her blanket, even in dreams. Ethan's small hand still held the worn ear of his bear. Elena smoothed Mia's curls with trembling fingers, then leaned down to press the lightest kiss to Ethan's forehead. She had almost lost them. The thought circled like a blade she could not escape. Lucas stood in the doorway, bandages visible beneath his open shirt, fresh stitches pulling tight across his side. He had refused pain medication stronger than ibuprofen. Said he needed to feel everything tonight. His eyes never left her. When she finally stood and turned toward him, he opened his arms without a word. She walked into them, collapsed against his chest. The scent of antiseptic mixed with cedar and him familiar now, necessary now. He held her so tightly she felt the tremor in his muscles, the effort it took not to crush her. "They're safe," he whispered into her hair. "We're safe." She nodded against his throat, could not speak. But safety is a lie the world tells to keep you breathing until the next blow lands. It came at 3:47 in the afternoon 4 days later. Elena had taken the children to their private school in Lincoln Park. Lucas insisted on armored transport, now 2 vehicles, Rocco, driving the lead car. She kissed them goodbye at the gate as always. Mia hugged her neck extra long. Ethan waved his bear. "I'll be back at 3, Elena promised. They disappeared through the heavy doors with the other children. At 2:58 her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered in the quiet corridor outside the school office. A man's voice, low, calm, almost polite. "Mrs. Harlan." She froze. No one called her that. "Not yet." "Who is this?" "You have something we want." "We have something you want." Her knees turned liquid. "Put them on." A rustle. Then Mia's voice, small, shaking. Mommy Elena's heart tore open. "I'm here, baby. I'm right here." Ethan's whimper followed wordless, terrified. The man came back on the line. Old meat-packing warehouse on South Halsted. 30 minutes. Come alone. No tracker. No gun. Or the little ones bleed out in front of you. The call ended. Elena stood motionless in the hallway. The world narrowed to a pinpoint. Nausea surged. She pressed a hand to the wall to keep from falling. 30 minutes. She had 28. She ran. No cab. No time. She took the first bus south, crowded, slow-smelling of wet coats and exhaust. Sat in the back, hands clenched so hard her nails drew blood from her palms. Snow had begun again, fat flakes sticking to the windows. She stared at her reflection, pale, hollow eyes, wild with a fear she had never known before. The warehouse district looked the same as before, rusted chain-link broken windows, silence thick as fog. She walked through the open gate, boots crunching on old ice. The same floodlight burned in the center yard. Mia and Ethan sat on the frozen ground again, hands bound, mouths taped, eyes red from crying. 3 men this time, not Marco. Strangers. Remnants of Victor's crew. One held a pistol loosely at his side, another smoked. The third watched her approach with dead eyes. Elena stopped 10 feet away. "Let them go." The smoker exhaled slowly. "You first." On your knees. She knelt. Gravel bit through her jeans. Cold seeped into her bones. The man with the pistol stepped forward, raised the barrel to Mia's temple. Elena's world tilted. Dizziness crashed over her black spots, dancing at the edges of her vision. "Please," she whispered, voice cracking. "They're just children." The man smiled. "Then beg." She bowed her head. Tears froze on her lashes. "Please don't hurt them. Take me. Hurt me. Just let them go." Silence. Then the screech of tires. An armored SUV burst through the gate doors, flying open before it stopped. Lucas stepped out, coatless stitches, pulling blood already seeping through the white bandage on his side. The 3 men spun. "Drop it," Lucas said, voice flat, final. The smoker laughed. "You were told to stay away." Lucas walked forward, slow, deliberate. "I don't take orders from dead men." Gunfire cracked. Not from the kidnappers. From behind the crates, Rocco and 2 others positioned earlier. One kidnapper dropped, shot in the leg. The second dove for cover. The third, the one with the pistol at Mia's head, swung toward Lucas. Elena moved. She lunged across the frozen ground, grabbed Ethan, first ripped the tape, cut the ties with shaking hands, pushed him toward the shadows. Mia next. The man with the pistol fired. The bullet struck Elena high in the thigh. Pain exploded, white-hot, blinding. She collapsed. Blood soaked her jeans instantly. Warm. Too warm. She still managed to pull Mia behind a rusted barrel, shielded both children with her body. Lucas roared, a sound torn from somewhere primal. He charged the shooter, tackled him to the ground. Fists rose and fell once, twice, until the man went limp. Rocco secured the others. Lucas scrambled across the yard on his knees. Reached Elena. Blood everywhere, her leg his side, the snow turning pink beneath them. He dropped beside her, hands pressing over the wound. "Elena, look at me." Her vision blurred. Numbness crept up from her toes. "Tell them," she whispered. "Tell them Mommy loves them." "No," his voice shattered. "You tell them. You're staying." He scooped her up, arms shaking. Blood soaked his shirt. Rocco Hospital. Now the SUV tore away. Elena's head lolled against Lucas's shoulder. Snowflakes melted on her cheeks. She felt his tears, hot, silent, falling into her hair. "I'm sorry," he choked. "I'm so sorry." She tried to lift a hand. Could not. "Love you," she breathed. He pressed his lips to her forehead. "Don't leave me," he begged. "Please, don't leave us." The ambulance met them halfway, lights flashing, sirens screaming. Paramedics pulled her from his arms. He followed, refusing to let go of her hand. In the ER bay, doctors swarmed. IVs, monitors, shouts for O negative. Lucas stood against the wall, blood-streaked, stitches torn open, face gray. He watched them wheel her away, then sank to the floor, head in hands, shoulders shaking. The man who commanded cities wept like a child, because the woman who had saved him again and again was bleeding out on a gurney, and all his power, all his money, all his empire meant nothing if he lost her. Hours passed. Surgery. Waiting room. Mia and Ethan, brought by Mara, curled against Rocco, eyes huge and frightened. Lucas held them both. Whispered promises he was not sure he could keep. Then the doctor emerged. "She's stable." Lucas stood so fast the chair tipped. The bullet nicked the femoral artery. "We got it. She lost a lot of blood. She's in recovery. You can see her soon." Lucas exhaled, a sound like something breaking loose inside his chest. He went to her. She lay pale against white sheets, tubes, monitors, thin arm bruised from needles. He sat, took her hand, pressed it to his lips. "I'm here," he whispered. "I'm right here." Her fingers moved weakly, squeezed once. He bowed his head, wept again, quiet, wrenching, because she had almost died for his children. For him. And he would spend every remaining day making sure she never had to bleed again. Never. The storm had tried to take everything. It had failed. And in the quiet aftermath, beeping monitors, soft-breathing small hands reaching for hers love burned brighter than ever. Fierce, unbreakable, eternal. 6 months slipped past like snow melting into spring. The calendar turned from the last bitter days of October 2025 into soft April light. Chicago softened 2 trees along the lakefront, budding green wind off the water, carrying the first real warmth in months. Elena walked out of Northwestern Memorial on a Tuesday morning, cradling a tiny bundle against her chest. The newborn daughter, named Lily after the flowers that had bloomed unexpectedly in the hospital courtyard during her long recovery, had arrived 3 weeks early but strong. Dark hair like Lucas's eyes, the same deep espresso skin, fair like his, but already kissed with the faintest flush of life. Elena held her as though the world might try to take her away again if she loosened her grip even slightly. Lucas walked beside her, still moving carefully from the scars that would never fully fade. He carried the infant car seat in one hand, the other resting protectively at the small of Elena's back. Mia skipped ahead, holding Ethan's hand. Both children wore new spring coats, the color of pale sunshine. Rocco followed at a discreet distance, ever watchful, ever silent. They did not go home to the Dearborn penthouse. They went south, to the old corner on the south side where the Bean and Brew had once stood. The coffee shop was gone, boarded windows, faded green awning torn away by winter storms. A small for-lease sign hung crooked in the glass. Elena stopped in front of it, looked at the place where she had once wiped counters until her hands cracked from cheap soap, where she had smiled politely at customers who never once looked her in the eye, where she had counted every nickel and dime like it was. Oxygen. Lucas stopped beside her, said nothing at first. Mia tugged her sleeve. "Mommy L, why are we here?" Elena knelt slowly because the scar on her thigh still pulled when she bent too fast. She looked into her daughter's wide hazel eyes. "This is where I used to work, sweetheart. Before I met your daddy. Before I met you and Ethan and Lily." Ethan clutched his bear tighter. Was it nice? Elena smiled, small, wistful. It was cold and lonely, but it was mine. Lucas crouched beside them. His voice was quiet, almost reverent. "I sat right there." He pointed to the spot where the back booth had once been, now just cracked linoleum and dust. Watching her, thinking she was the bravest person I'd ever seen, and I was terrified. Elena looked at him. Tears shimmered but did not fall. "You were wrong," she whispered. "I wasn't brave. I was just surviving." He reached out, brushed a curl from her forehead. "You were both." They stayed there a long time. 5 people standing in front of a shuttered dream. Wind stirred old receipts across the sidewalk. Somewhere nearby, a bus hissed past. Lucas spoke first. "I bought the building." Elena blinked. "Last month, quietly. The block too. I thought, maybe we could make it something new. A community center. Free meals. Tutoring for kids who don't have anyone watching out for them. A safe place. Like the one you never had." She stared at him. Tears slipped free this time. "You didn't have to, I wanted to." His voice cracked. "Every time I look at you, every time I see how thin your wrists still are, how you still wake up checking the locks 3 times a night, I remember what I almost cost you. What my world almost took from you. From us." He took her free hand, pressed it to his chest. "I was powerful. I had money. I had fear on my side. But I didn't have this." He looked at the children, at the baby sleeping against Elena's heart. "I didn't have love that didn't demand something in return." Elena stepped closer. Lily stirred, made a small sound. Elena rocked her gently. "I was nothing," she said softly. "Hungry. Cold. Invisible. And you saw me anyway." Lucas cupped her face with both hands. "I saw fire," he said. "And I still do." He kissed her, then slow, deep, unhurried. Right there on the cracked sidewalk in front of a shuttered coffee shop. Mia giggled. Ethan covered his eyes but peeked through his fingers. When they parted, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he whispered. "Not because of the danger, not because of the children. Marry me because I can't breathe right when you're not next to me." Elena laughed through tears. "I already said yes, in the hospital, when you thought I couldn't hear you begging me to stay." He smiled, real unguarded, the kind of smile he had not worn in years. "Then let's make it official. Small, quiet, just us and the kids. And whoever wants to stand witness." She nodded. They walked away from the old shop hand in hand, Lucas carrying the car seat, Elena carrying Lily, Mia and Ethan skipping between them. Behind them, the wind stirred one last receipt across the pavement. It fluttered once, then settled. And stayed. Months later, on a warm June afternoon, the new center opened quietly. No press. No ribbon cutting. Just a hand-painted sign above the door, Hayes Harlan Community House. Inside, free breakfast every morning after school, help a warm place to sit when the wind turned cold again. Elena ran the kitchen most days, apron, tied over her dress, hair pulled back, laughing with the kids who came through the door hungry and wary. Lucas worked in the background, funds, security, quiet conversations with men who once would have feared him. Now they came asking for help instead. One evening after closing, Elena stood at the counter wiping down the same kind of formica she had once cleaned for $12 an hour plus tips. Lucas came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, kissed the side of her neck. "You're happy here," he murmured. She leaned back into him. "I'm home." He turned her gently, looked down at her, still thin in places, still carrying shadows under her eyes from too many sleepless nights, but glowing now. Alive now. "I never thought love could look like this," he said. Quiet, ordinary, real. She reached up, touched his face. Love doesn't care about skin color. It doesn't care about bank accounts. It only cares that you show up. Every day, even when it hurts. He kissed her again, soft, lingering. Outside, the city hummed on. Inside, a family built from broken pieces thrived. And somewhere in the quiet spaces between heartbeats, they both understood. Knowledge is the light that finds you in the dark. Knowledge lets you see the person standing in front of you, not their past, not their scars, but their courage. Knowledge teaches that compassion crosses every boundary. Knowledge reminds us that no one is invisible when someone chooses to look. Knowledge opens doors that money never could. Lesson after lesson arrives when we least expect it. Lesson upon lesson shows us how to hold on. Lesson by lesson, we learn that real strength is quiet. Lesson upon lesson proves that love, true love, needs no conditions. Lesson after lesson whispers that kindness is the strongest currency of all. To everyone watching this video tonight, may you carry good health in your body, joy in your days, and peace in every breath. Thank you for staying with us through this story. If it touched something inside you, if it reminded you of your own struggles, your own hopes, your own moments of almost giving up, please subscribe to the Alex Truths channel. Hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear that love can still win. Drop a comment below and tell me, how did this story make you feel? Does it connect to anything real in your own life? I read every word. I listened to every emotion you share from deep within your hearts. Goodbye for now. I promise I'll see you again in the next video. Disclaimer: all stories on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.